You are without doubt the worst pirate I've ever heard of.
But you have heard of me.
A film series based on a theme park ride, the Pirates of the Caribbean franchise isn't exactly known for its historical accuracy, and while the plot and characters are obviously fictional, the movies are framed by the real Golden Age of Piracy, adding to misconceptions about this era in history. Today on ScreenRant, let's break down the biggest lies you were told in the Pirates of the Caribbean movies.
What do you say to 3 shillings? And we forget the name.
Welcome to Port Royal, Mr. Smith.
Lie number 1, Port Royal was central to the Golden Age of Piracy. Indeed, Port Royal in Jamaica served as a central setting in the entire run of the franchise, the events of which take place between 1720 and 1750. But although it's true that Port Royal was steeped in pirate activity, this was true for any contested Caribbean island at the time. In fact, although Port Royal served as the de facto capital of Jamaica, it was also destroyed in the earthquake of 1692, which sank half the town under liquefied sand. And this happened over a decade before the actual Golden Age of Piracy, which many historians peg to be somewhere between 1713 to 1730. In short, Port Royal was already long destroyed by the time the Curse of the Black Pearl happened. And it wasn't the central hub of maritime crime that the movies make it out to be. To be fair, however, the films were right about Jamaica being highly coveted during this period. Combined with the nation's wealth of sugar plantations, its strategic placement in the Caribbean made Port Royal the site of many battles between royal navies and pirates alike. That said, the real pirate hub of this era wasn't Port Royal and wasn't even in the Caribbean. Instead, it was Nassau, in the island of Providence in the Bahamas, which served as the headquarters of several successful pirate crews during the era. And this brings us to the next big lie the movie told you.
The brethren court is a gathering at Shipwreck Cove. And Jack, you and I are going, and there'll be no arguing that point.
Lie number 2. Pirates were governed by a central authority and code of conduct. Pirates of the Caribbean at World's End greatly expanded the franchise by introducing Shipwreck Cove, a safe haven for pirates within a dormant Caribbean volcano. Shipwreck Cove served as the home of the Brethren Council, which governs the scoundrels of the era through the principles of the Pirata Codex. In reality, there's no record of anything like Shipwreck Cove, the Pirate Council, or a unified pirates code anywhere in the Caribbean, but these elements are likely based on what happened in Nassau at the turn of the 17th century. After a storm sank a Spanish treasure fleet off of Florida in 1715, looters spent their stolen gold in nearby Nassau, which at the time was already a known pirate's nest. Merchants, smugglers, and privateers alike flocked to the flourishing town, which is sometimes wrongly referred to as a pirate republic. However, though Shipwreck Cove was a fairly entertaining attempt at depicting Nassau's unique culture, the real pirate hub never actually developed into anything resembling a nation or central authority. Instead, it was simply a good place for anyone to fence stolen goods. Eventually, the wealth and success of Nassau led to the creation of the Flying Gang, a loose confederation of pirate crews operating out of the archipelago. And though these crews shared battle tactics, customs, and spoils of war, they didn't create or enforce a singular code of conduct for members to follow. Rather, as customary for the time, crews were most strictly governed by the codes of their respective vessels, captains, or voyages. Although these codes were checked and balanced by the then accepted norms of maritime justice, they varied greatly and were subject to change based on conditions or captains' whims. And unlike in the movies, real pirates didn't adhere much to the principle of peaceful parley, the gentlemanly wartime practice of negotiating surrender terms. That said, in at least one scene, Captain Barbossa clarified as much to Elizabeth Swann, who misguidedly sought to parley with a notorious pirate for the safety of Port Royal. Yet even this tinge of authenticity leads to the next big lie told in the films.
It is my intention to commandeer one of these ships, pick up a crew and Tortuga, raid, pillage, plunder, and otherwise pilfer my Weasley black guts out.
Lie number 3. Pirates are lovable misfits. To be fair, the Pirates of the Caribbean movies weren't the cause of this popular misconception. However, fueled by the stellar lead performances of Johnny Depp, this franchise is the biggest perpetrator of this lie, and it only stands to reason that the film's hero Jack Sparrow, a lovable misfit with a golden heart, is a complete work of fiction. In reality, pirates were one of the most vicious, violent, and self-serving groups of people in history. For instance, the historic pirate Henry Morgan is supposedly one of the co-authors of the Pirata Codex, the rules that govern the Brethren Council in the films. In real life, however, Morgan's men once tortured a captive by suspending him over the ground, the weight of his body held only by the ropes attached to his thumbs and big toes. The pirates thrashed the ropes to break his bones, dropped a heavy stone on his torso, and even burned his face using dried leaves. The same crew once used nuns and friars as human shields as they advanced towards a castle defended by cannons. Meanwhile, Blackbeard is played by the charismatic Ian McShane in the movies, but the real Blackbeard once shot his second in command in the knee and left him limping for life, just to remind his crew that he's the boss. And these merely skim the surface of the documented atrocities that pirates committed through the Age of Sail. While it's fun to imagine these dastardly ne'er-do-wells coming together to save the world, the real pirates were simply mercenaries who followed their own rules. And though the Pirates of the Caribbean movies don't shy away from depicting how pirates really behaved, the movies also wrongly paint them as heroes. Today, there are pirates that are considered national heroes, but such rare cases are the exception rather than the rule. Curiously, the modern romanticized notions surrounding pirates have been around for centuries, and they were established around the same time as the Golden Age of Piracy, which leads us to our next big lie.
They've started to sing, so... finally.
Lie number 4. Peg legs and eye patches were exclusively used by pirates. While Captain Barbossa's signature peg leg and Righetti's eye patch seem like inconsequential background details, they're symptoms of this all too common misconception about pirates. In reality, such injuries were quite typical, not just of pirate crews, but also among many seafaring vessels at the time. Combined with the state of medical technology in the early 1700s, the prevalence of sea battles led to many sailors losing eyes and limbs. And as former legally employed sailors comprised the crews of many pirate ships, they not only suffered the same common injuries, but also shared the same customs and beliefs. In relation to this, pirates didn't have a monotony on singing sea shanties while working the deck, which was instead a common practice among any vessels sailing the Caribbean. These melodies not only helped pass the time, but also in uniting crews that typically came from very different backgrounds and cultures. The idea that only pirates sang together or sported body modifications stems from their most popular depictions in pop culture, even before the Pirates of the Caribbean movies dominated the box office. And this leads us to another huge misconception.
Vile and dissolute creatures, the lot of them.
Actually, I find it all fascinating.
Yes, that's what concerns me.
Lie number 5. The Pirates of the Caribbean movies were based mainly on a Disneyland ride. It's true that the franchise was inspired by the theme park ride of the same name, but all these romanticized notions about the pirate life circle all the way back to the Golden Age of Piracy itself. Published in Britain in 1724, A General History of the Pirates is considered to be the primary source of how pirates have been depicted in pop culture. Indeed, even as they ravaged the seas, thanks to this collection of fantastical accounts of a pirate's life, they were already being romanticized in the early 18th century, and these idealized notions eventually led to novels like Treasure Island and On Stranger Tides, the said Disneyland ride, and one of the most profitable franchises in film history. So while the movies were inspired by a theme park ride, they're actually the culmination of a centuries-long collective of storytelling tradition. On one hand, continuing this tradition only perpetrates long-standing misconceptions about pirates, and this risks ignoring both their positive and negative contributions to real history. On the other hand, the Pirates of the Caribbean movies are clearly made for entertainment, and though they've made a habit of exaggerating pirate culture and history, it's all in good fun. Do you think these alternate history lessons should continue in the 6th Pirates of the Caribbean movie? Or do you think a soft reboot should be a good opportunity for historically accurate pirate adventures? Thanks for watching ScreenRant, and stay tuned for more movie news.